Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Welcome. So, once again, we are discussing Jerry Goldsmith, famous film composer and conductor. You probably best know him for movies such as Logan's Run, the Planet of the Apes films, the Star Trek films, the Rambo films, Patton, Chinatown, Alien, Poltergeist, Gremlins, Total Recall, Air Force One, LA Confidential, The Mummy 1999, and even the Universal Studios and Paramount Pictures various logos. Welcome to the show. Once again is Robert Cohen and Jon Mark. And Jon Mark.
What's up?
So, isn't it just wild how even if no one knows who Jerry Goldsmith is, everyone has virtually heard Jerry Goldsmith without realizing it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just nonstop. It's just like, yeah, you have heard him. You might not know him, but you heard him. And I was really surprised at how much TV he had done. Just select episodes of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Twilight Zone, Thriller. It was like, jeez.
Yeah.
But I like how he starts off with mostly westerns, like 100 Rifles, even war movies, The Sand Peoples. I think even other movies that I didn't realize it was him that I've seen a lot recently, like Peter Bogdanovich's Seconds. Actually, no.
Oh, man. Seconds. So good.
John Frankenheimer, my bad. But yeah. I'm a big fan of his son, Joel Goldsmith, as well. And he kind of took over duties from him post 1996. And he started doing a lot of TV as well. But yeah, so 60s, and it's pretty much midway through the 70s where he just takes a turn. His award-winning score for The Omen and just even other movies, The Great Train Robbery, The Omen 2, The Swarm, Coma, Damnation Alley. I think those get him through onto the 80s. And it's kind of funny, even just plenty of other movies and miniseries events that for whatever reason you're gonna have to look around to actually find the exact score for. Like he did the European version of the Legend score.
Yeah. That's right. 2 versions, Tangerine Dream and Jerry Goldsmith.
It's nutty. He returns to the Twilight Zone with their movie. He did Psycho 2. I don't even know if you can find the score for that one. Raggedy Man, Omen Free, the Masada TV miniseries, and even the infamous flop Inchon, which was best known for, flopping so bad that it wasn't available on home video officially.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that.
I I don't think it's that bad a movie, but it's a stinker still somewhere in there, and it's one of those. It's just been shown on select, antenna channels over the years, and you can find it on YouTube, no problem. It's just a very full of itself movie. But it's kind of funny just because of that bizarre,
Well, there's others like Damnation Alley's a pretty bad movie, but there's still good scores.
Yeah, Damnation was just one of those weird. He did The Boys from Brazil, and that's one of those. I think I like the material better than the actual adaptation, but I need to rewatch it again. But I had Damnation Alley mixed up with like this similar. I got it mixed up with actually no, I got the right one. Okay, so he even does just some other bizarre TV movies, and this Frank Sinatra film. I didn't realize he did Magic for, the Anthony Hopkins evil puppet movie, but that makes
man, such a great movie.
Yeah, it's wild how he has a lot of scores that have been rejected on occasion, though, like Alien Nation. You're like, what?
Yeah, apparently he was also Roddenberry's first choice for the Star Trek TV series, and that's how he got the first motion picture.
That makes sense. He just became so widely known for it with the movies, to where it's like, yeah, you need him to start off the show. And so throughout the 90s, he continues it. The Russia House, Sleeping with My with the Enemy, and he has even some rejected scores for the Joe Pesci comedy The Public Eye and the 1992 boxing drama Gladiator, even Super Mario Brothers, John's favorite. And that follows it up with The Vanishing, The Shadow, The River Wild, Congo, Powder, Chain Reaction, Fierce Creatures, Ghost in the Darkness, Deep Rising, another favorite of John's, Small Soldiers, and once again, the 13th Warrior, so working again with John McTiernan on a bunch of these. And then 2000s winds down. He has a rejected score for Richard Donner's Timeline, and does other big scores like Hollow Man, The Last Castle, The Sum of All Fears, and Looney Tunes Back in Action. So, so John, what was the first time you laid eyes upon Mr. Goldsmith, the late great?
Obviously, it was with films like Gremlins and Poltergeist.
Okay, so you were getting into the Spielberg-produced movies. Gotcha.
Yeah, at the time. And later on, I managed to dive into his filmography even more with Executive Decision, Ghost in the Darkness, Deep Rising, and eventually ones like Coma and Alien. So,
very awesome. Robert, when did you start recognizing the various scores and style?
Sure. Well, let's see. Back in junior high school, right into high school, let's see, I was in junior high school like 75, 76. So that dates me. I'm like 58 now. But even back then, I was a super movie buff, and I collected movie soundtrack albums because I loved to play them. And then I would play them while I'd be writing, like my film ideas, because playing them in the background would give me ideas. And I wanted to open with this sort of revelation. Like back when I first had some Jerry Goldsmith scores in the 70s, can't remember what the first ones would have been, but
maybe The Wind and the Lion or Chinatown. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. Certainly, before the ones that I really loved, which I'll mention later. But here's this. This is a guilty admission. I feel sort of stupid about it now. But back then, I had this idea that Jerry Goldsmith was, and here's the phrase I applied to him. He was the poor man's John Williams.
I mean,
he was good, but he wasn't John Williams, And then over the years, I've come to see, no, he is as great as anybody. He's different than John Williams for sure, but he is so talented and so diverse. He may not be as sweeping as some other people, but I've grown to really regret that thought and to see him as a genius in his own right and not deserving of that. And then I just would say back early on, way before I knew that he had anything to do with the Twilight Zone or Thriller, those things that I liked as a kid. I would say, I know, Logan's Run definitely would have been one of the first ones that I had. I love that movie in junior high school because Farrah Fawcett, I had to go watch it 3 times just to see her 3 minutes. But it was good science fiction. But then I fell in love with the Capricorn 1 soundtrack. That movie is so pulse pounding and exciting. That freaking chase through the desert music, I would put that on and sit there writing my little ideas out because it's so exciting and so pulse pounding. And then, later stuff obviously would come up, like still trying to stick to the 70s. Alien, of course, and The Omen were huge. And of course, Star Trek 79. Maybe before I drop off, since I mentioned those, Great Train Robbery was one of the film scores that first really grabbed me at how amazing a composer could take a theme and then play with that theme through the whole album. The theme to the Great Train Robbery is so clear and precise. And then throughout the rest of the score, it slows down, it speeds up, it's ebullient, it's sad, all with the same basic tenets of the same theme. So that was those are two of my favorites, Great Train Robbery and Capricorn 1. Star Trek is a pretty good score. It's in the right theme for the series.
With them in Planet of the Apes.
And then I would say something about Alien, but I'll wait because I wanted to go into a little bit more depth about what some of the stories about Alien. But those were definitely two of my early favorites. And I would probably say Logan's Run is probably the first one I came running home with, to play on my turntable.
Okay, great. I was with you. At first, it seemed like he was more a quantity and eventually got a lot of quality, but really everyone wanted to work with him. He just had a very poignancy to him in his scores. And I didn't even realize he also did the themes for TV shows like Police Story and The Waltons.
Man from Uncle theme.
Man from Uncle. Well, wait, did he?
Yeah. Wow. It was a very simple thing when he did it, and then Henry Mancini boosted
That's the problem. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Oh, shit. So he's got some underrated movies that I don't think as many people have seen also. I mean, The Blue Mags, and Hour of the Gun, I think are very good Western scores. Even did freaking Von Ryan's Express and 7 Days to May, the other Frankenheimer, Joint Chiefs coup.
There's like 200 films here.
200 films, and that's just it. I've seen them more than I realized. I mean, even the gangster film, The Dawn is Dead, Papillion, two key Charles Bronson movies, Breakout and Breakheart Pass, which is a cool, mystery on a train that becomes a Western later on. And, again, with the 80s, he has just so many other just war and fantasy and even animated movies. I think many people will like the Scott Glenn thriller, The Challenge. And again, he's being reused by Frankenheimer. He returns for Poltergeist 2. Yeah, he even has comedies like The Lonely Guy. Again, just utter bizarre, infamous sci-fi like Supergirl and Runaway. I have no problem with his score for King Solomon's Mines. It's a junky, Canon Films flop that's trying to cash in on Indiana Jones. So
I went back and revisited the Our Man Flint and In Like Flint scores, which are also like comedy James Bond, but it was so perfectly that swinging 60s Austin Powers kind of.
It really was the Austin Powers of its time. Yeah.
Yeah. It was totally of its time like that. And I also have to retract. It's about 100 scores, not 200.
That's so true. And I mean, I totally get why even Joe Dante used them for Inner Space and The Burbs. It wasn't just the Gremlins connection. I mean, you can tell he knew when to get serious, when to be a little more lampooning and be a little doot, 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 just a little here,
Even
there, and there.
in the context of the film, that's what helped.
Absolutely. You hear the Criminal Law score and it's very suspenseful, while you hear Warlock and it's kind of just letting the cat out of the bag. Dun, 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 dun. It's a monster movie. kind of. And so, yeah, no, I don't know about the Alien score, and I'm mainly more familiar with.
Here's what I just would like to throw out to start on Alien, then see what other people said. So I went to do some research on him, and it said his first Academy Award nomination was for a score for a film about Freud. So I went and put on the music for Freud, the theme, and I'm like, what?
This can't be true.
Exactly like Alien. And then I went to like 450 in, where somebody said, no, then that's actually from when Dallas is in the crawl space. And so I'm like, all right, something's going on here. And then I looked it up. Ridley Scott liked most of the music, but a couple of things he wasn't satisfied with. And without Jerry's permission or even asking him, he went and licensed the music from Freud and used some of the tracks for Alien. So
wow,
you can hear some of the very same themes that he was using in one of his earliest acclaimed scores, not just the stuff that Scott lifted, but also just some of the themes were also still getting played in the Alien score, because the Freud score was very atonal, very sort of mysterious, and it fit with Alien perfectly. So Ridley was just, nope, that's what I want. And he went and licensed it and added that to the soundtrack. And I thought that was fascinating.
That's insane. Wow. It just couldn't help himself. Man.
It's good stuff. It's good music.
It is, but that's wild. So then they're at the premiere and they're like, why is this not lining up with what I recall composing?
The music is so haunting, and it's not just horror music. Like, let's look at The Omen. Kind of changed the whole thing. Like, The Omen did for horror movie soundtracks, like, I don't know what Captain Crunch did for Breakfast here. Like that thing, that The Omen, like that, all that Santos, Davy knows,
Yeah, just up and down with the dialogue, and it's more of a mystery score that happens to be in a horror movie, Well,
yeah. And so the Alien just has some parts of it that are so quiet and mellow and tranquil, and then just eerie and creepy and then downright terrifying. So he really was a master of the game by the late 70s, and just kept going from there.
Right. Well, very cool, very cool. And I mean, I thought he had kind of given it up mostly after the 90s, but yeah, he was still kicking for a bit. And he has just some other outrageous like westerns and mystery movies and other spectacles that you're like, wow, okay, I wonder if there's even a score of that. He has a bunch of TV movies. He has the wacky Burt Reynolds movie Shamus. I just saw this movie last year, and it was a pretty cool score and a otherwise intense, all-star cast disaster movie, the Cassandra Crossing. And I was like, wow, okay. And he did the war movie MacArthur. And I mean, even, I definitely had the Rambo free score with me somewhere. It was a fun, how he does the whole dun dun, just taunting the audience before he lets loose. But even Extreme Prejudice is just one hell of a Western score, and you can see why Walter Hill uses them a few times, is because he essentially just, and you don't just feel the tension, you just kind of feel the blood, sweat, and tears. And John might like this. He did Leviathan. It's a like it or hate it creature feature, and I didn't realize he also did Basic Instinct and Malice and The Vanishing and even freaking First Night in City Hall. So, I mean, if anything, I think the reason everyone wants to check out all the scores is they really do all stand out. Even blockbuster fare like, Secret of Nim, Mulan, and even U.S. Marshals and the 99 version of The Haunting is like, he is bigger than the movie.
So what are some of your favorites, Jonathan?
Well, like I said before, there's ones like It's Like a Decision I've always defended.
It's kind of like that. It doesn't feel patriotic so much as just remind you you're watching a military, hostage thriller.
Also helps ease the tension a lot of the scenes, which I've always appreciated with him. And one that I've always enjoyed that I know not a lot of people talk about with him was The Shadow, which I've always found to be one of the best superhero scores.
I think it might have been reused somewhere, and
I think it was at one point.
Even just regular dramas and comedies like Rudy, the sports drama, 6 Degrees of Separation, even IQ with Tim Robbins and Meg Ryan. It's like, yeah, I've seen him more than I even realize it. And so I definitely want to revisit a lot of these movies and just listen to the score even. Just because, like you say, I mean, he can't compete with John Williams, Rob, but like at the same time, like he really does nuke it. He ensures that there's some degree of emotion, and I can't ever think of a time where his score got a little too loud where I couldn't hear it, or he's kind of like today's Hans Zimmer where he's just reusing unreleased tracks from like Pirates of the Caribbean and Dark Knight,
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
He seemed to just always he just started fresh and new. I mean, I would even be curious to listen to Along Came a Spider or The Edge, the giant bear survival movie with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. So it's like, when he shows up, that, like you say, he has a relentless tone, and even occasionally can be very lively and pleasant and easy listening. So, I mean,
yeah.
You reminded me of another story that I read about him that, he had his own sensibility, his own style. So when he went in to do the score for the Blue Max, should have been in the late 60s, there's a George Papard kind of.
Ursula Andress.
Yeah. He went in and the filmmakers had put in one of those temp tracks of music with also Sprach their Zarathustra, the 2001 Space Odyssey theme. They put that in as sort of like, temp music for some of the scenes. And he said he almost turned down the score because he said it made it difficult, to do your own scoring and to arrive at it because it clouds your thinking, because now you've watched the film and you've got that in your head.
Yeah.
And so, and he was like, it was a struggle for him, but he was like, eventually he was like, no, the film's good. And he came up with, his own take on it. And the fact that he not just could do that, but considering how prolific he was, we're looking at his output. It's basically 4 or 5 films per year that he was cranking out. That's a lot of fucking work, excuse my French. And
I don't know how he does it.
And to still have so many home runs, virtually no duds, and not very little overlap, and not a lot of self-plagiarization. He clearly had the composing chops he needed for that job. He was really great.
Yeah, and I mean, once he gets in with the filmmakers, they do tend to use him quite a lot and invite him back, as opposed to like other ones who were frequent in the 90s, and basically everyone would just say, I'm just doing a copy and paste of, every time. And I like to say, I mean, any movie that we don't like, it still has a lot of talent invested in it versus just very junky, oversaturated, or just not my thing at all. It's more of that versus, like to say, is like, oh, a filmmaker I really don't like, so I just, unfortunately, because I don't like them, I'm not going to check out the movie. It's less of that and more just, just all, like to say, diversity. And I'm just even more intrigued by how he's able to just, like you say, do so much each and every time. And it's just like, how does he keep up that momentum? It's not easy. So, but yeah, every interview I've seen part of him, he's pretty much just always kind of just given minuscule stuff, essentially talking about how he, for better or worse, just, again, he just reads the script and he just thinks to himself, how does it sound? And it does make you wonder how many people get access to a script, especially when so many blockbusters are often changing, in development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know sometimes, he would compose things from the script that it would fly all the way. And other times, like on Alien, things had to keep being rewritten and then changed. So clearly he was able to work with all sorts of different environments.
Yeah, someone must have given him a heads up saying, hey, it's just, we're trying, but there's going to be something that, that we don't get it until we get it. So it's, I think overall, he just mainly, just like you say, whenever it didn't go his way, he kind of sucked it up and said, hey, still better to see my name, on that big giant movie versus, get all pissed off and be labeled as difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You never heard anybody say he was difficult any company he worked on. Unlike some composers.
Yeah, I mean, and in all fairness, his son Joel is so talented as well. Just done a lot of giant TV work as well. But I applaud him for even trying various music concerts, Jerry, and he mainly just has a lot of classical music, modernism.
But yeah, he won't use them just in the obvious way. So, for example, like in The Boys from Brazil, instead of using like scary music, when you think, he would use, I remember he would juxtapose. He would use lively waltzes to counter, to make a counterpoint to the idea of cloning Hitler. So it would be like create that tension by using the sort of almost the opposite, the unexpected music, to create the tension.
1,000%. I can't ever feel like he's even got the same exact tools or instruments on every occasion. It seems like he adapts with the flow. He's quoted as saying, and I quote, once you get caught up in the creative process, something inside takes over and your subconscious just does it for you. When explaining that he didn't want to do the same thing over and over again, but he still wanted to have a signature style. And Marco Beltrami, who's another great film composer we'll be covering here, states in a 2001 interview, without Jerry, film music would probably be in a different place than it is now. I think he more than any other composer bridged the gap between the old Hollywood scoring style and the modern film composer. Very nice. And believe it or not, Marco ended up composing the Omen remake and dedicated his score to Goldsmith. So
Nice.
Brian Tyler, another cool guy, has apparently, he now does the updated Universal Studios logo, but he retained the melody that Goldsmith had done in 1997. So, I mean, I think, yeah, like you say, everyone is very influenced by him more than they want to even admit it, because his horns and, again, kind of old school kind of orchestras are really just, how can you not be influenced by him? So,
yeah, and I think that not wanting to admit it thing is past. I think he's finally risen to the position where he's just esteemed across the board as being, the person who deserves all the accolades. He's just proven over and over again just how talented he was and how diverse and prolific he could be. So I think at this point, everyone just considers him a legend. Did he pass away, or is he still around? No, he passed in 2004.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I should have looked that up.
No, all good. I mean, in many ways, his music is basically still alive. So, I mean, and because, again, kind of same thing with John Williams. If John Williams, he'll get up there, unfortunately. But I mean, if he were to pass away the next day, you're like, yeah, but I've seen so many of his movies that he is very much still alive in my heart. So, but yeah, I can't think of really any other composer who gets an opportunity to be on like 5 different genres like a year: horror, westerns, action, sci-fi, and
comedy.
Yeah, comedy and animated movies on occasion. It's like, usually it's whatever zone you're in, you pretty much go there, and you just do mainly just mystery or thriller kind of stuff. And and like to say, I mean, typically when you're a John Williams kind, you also just work with a lot of the same people, and it's just so wild how Universal just associated themselves with him. You would have thought it would have been someone like with Imagine Entertainment or on a Ron Howard epic, and you're like, nope, it just you are the one. You are the guy who, and obviously, the Star Trek movies were selling well, so that makes sense to me why they would have wanted him as the home video logo composer too. So there's no way for anyone to not have heard of him or say I missed a movie by him. Like, oh, you've seen him. You've heard him.
Plenty of them.
And I mean, any movie, like you say, that Robert, that's lacking still has some degree of entertainment value. It's just like, it had a good idea. It had a cool, some great talent associated with it. It's way more than, say, if you were to look at it nowadays and you're just like, I just don't remember anything about it, so I don't want to revisit the movie. And I can't. I don't think he's. Can you name anyone who's been in this many franchises?
No,
can't really at all.
And they all stand apart from each other. I mean, even Tora Tora, it's a long movie, but it's kind of a beautiful score for what's an otherwise very tragic, World War disaster movie. And it never. He's really good at transitions too. I find, because basically he. For the occasion, he'll just make great use of just kind of, again, just suspense. I think, again, that Hitchcock shows and Twilight Zone really did it for him. I think he really decided to just have the trumpets be blaring during, again, the intense stuff, and then have a lot of the other just more casual percussion.
So back to that point about him being kind of a legend now and just, universally getting accolades. But he had 17 Academy Award nominations.
17.
And then the only one he won for was for The Omen, and kudos for that. But the same year that he won for The Omen, he was also nominated for The Wind and the Lion. So he had 2 the same year. He also and that same year he was nominated for Best Song for Ava Sante, the famous chanting Omen horror song. So that's one end of the spectrum, but this is very surprising. I was looking at his awards here, and this one's hilarious. In 1986, he won a Golden Raspberry for Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, he did.
The score is great. That's the other problem. That dude hated Stallone.
Original songs he won for.
Oh, but it wasn't for the score. It was for the worst original. It was for the worst song.
With him and Frank Stallone. That's why.
The one that was with Frank Stallone and Peter Schless.
Wow.
Which probably, I don't know the song, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was pretty cheesy.
I mean, Stallone cheese. So I don't know. I definitely have heard, when I see a military thriller, I definitely often will feel like a score feels like a Rambo score, much like, again, when I see any of these modern day noirs, they definitely take a chapter from LA Confidential or Chinatown. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I just thought it was funny.
it is. It's just guilt by association versus we're actually physically punching you. Wow.
They also nominated him for King Solomon's Mines in Congo, but he didn't win those.
Which is just so wild because the score is like the best part of the movie. I mean,
Yeah. It's just, again, that was back in the 80s and the mid 90s. So it was like, over time, the opinion about him has definitely evolved.
totally.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of my heroes, and he's one of the few, composers that I still really enjoy pulling out some vinyl and putting it on to listen to.
1,000%. It just seems like if you're gonna take from Goldsmith, like definitely take those scores. Take and I mean, more or less, he's got to basically have, like you say, worked his ass off and paid off. I mean, most everyone, when they start out, they just kind of let themselves be typecast before they get a little more comfortable. And it's just so wild. I want to know more.
Same here.
I'm going to read this quote just because it'll be fun. Talking about his legacy, and I'm cheating with Wikipedia, but who cares? When he was given a Career Achievement Award from the Society for Preservation of Film Music in 1993, giving him the award was Henry Mancini, one of his colleagues. And when he gave him the award, Mancini said, quote, "He has instilled two things in his colleagues in this town. One thing he does, he keeps us honest. And the second one is he scares the hell out of us."
So true. I mean,
he was so talented. Yeah, that's good.
But that is something, because like I've lost track of many composers who I deeply love who would do something like a junky, like Roland Emmerich, or had just Brett Ratner score. And, since the filmmakers are known for doing cheesy popcorn movies versus being substantial dramas, half the time you'll hear a great score that isn't well timed or plays a little earlier or has some cheesy acting that is happening over the score. So, I mean, man, he knew how to pick them. I mean,
He really did.
And yeah, I definitely have heard, I mean, he knows how to just be, I think, intense as opposed to just focus on the gloom and doom, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like you say, I mean, Alien would have been a different movie. Obviously, the Star Trek shows would have had a different composer for the main titles. And then, again, his various other mystery. I mean, I can't imagine the Omen score not being used because, I mean, that movie in general is just very influential for all the other demon possession franchises and religious imagery. And I'm surprised he wasn't even contacted for something like Hellraiser or The Exorcist. They probably couldn't afford him. They're like, he's too good. We want to be different.
I couldn't afford them at all.
Yeah.
I will say the original Hellraiser score was by an amazing band called Coil. And if you ever get a chance to hear their original score that was rejected by the studio, it's a freaking masterpiece. It was so much better than the score they went with. Yeah, but back then, Jerry Goldsmith was definitely out of Hellraiser's budget, probably.
Probably. I will definitely check those out.
Same here.
Man, so freaking Coil. I've heard of them. I just haven't. I don't know why I haven't checked those guys out. I just mainly associated with Christopher Young, whose scores are hard to actually get a physical copy of, believe it or not. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the people who he replaced, I mean, their scores are definitely hanging out there somewhere. Like Randy Newman, of all people, scored Air Force One before he came aboard. And if you listen to it, you're like, it is an interesting rejected score, but it's just so wrong for the kind of movie it's supposed to be.
Right.
I would see people even do YouTube videos where they would take rejected scores and sync them up, and that was one of them. And I was like, yeah, I'm laughing before the traitor shoots the Secret Service agent. It's just so wrong, and it's a shame because I love Randy Newman. I mean, I don't know what his deal is with hating short people, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, I love Randy Newman too. He's great.
Oh man, if anything, do you think you would be different? Just us filmmakers in this chat, let alone just even. I mean, that is something to bridge the gap between just kind of an immortal time, like just please every kind of time period and accompany the period piece that a movie is set within. That is something, because I'm thinking of plenty of other people now, and as talented as they are, I mean, I even mentioned Brian Tyler. I'm sure there's some kinds of scores he probably couldn't do or get a little too monotone where they work for the movie but are a little repetitive to listen to alone on the score itself. So I mean, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who I would never in a million years hire for a horror or a Western or even an action movie score. This would be, you just probably wouldn't be in their wheelhouse. And him, I think he aced it every time, and he just always decided, what could I possibly lose? Be in the essence of the movie.
Yeah.
What's going on in your head that you feel you can unleash it? And clearly, if he had this many opportunities, this is speculation, but someone had to have trusted him, or just loved him, just where they gave him a lot of license.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something though? I mean, because generally every other person you hear stories about how they had to rescore it because the movie was being recut many times, or the filmmaker was difficult to get along with because they were just so passionate or ego-headed. So that's something. More or less, I mean, I can't think of anyone who's a film head who hasn't owned one of his scores at some point.
Yeah, I mean, you can't miss them. There's so many films that, whatever generation you were in, if you grew up on, Logan's Run, or you grew up on Gremlins and Poltergeist, or you grew up, on stuff like Total Recall, or, stuff.
Total Recall was wild, because I could have sworn it was Basil Poledouris for the longest time, but I think I always had it mixed up. He had his score rejected or something. But that's another guy who's pretty beloved, who's pretty good at creating an atmosphere in every one of his scores. But yeah, no, this is definitely a rare mix of quantity equaling quality.
It's here that for whatever Goldsmith considered Total Recall one of his best scores.
That is something, because that is a very grim, makeup filled movie, and he creates that weird alien world while also, much like with Gremlins, doing the occasional satirical moments. And yeah, he's definitely paying attention to what's happening on screen, unlike other composers who just seem to just kind of be too close to the material to kind of know when to kind of back off a bit or lean into it more. So I mean,
Right.
he's, and I don't know how he kept up this energy, man. That's
I like that he also didn't just always keep going back to the same kind of like classical composition tools. Like he would be so innovative. Like in his full score for Alien, there's like a 16th century instrument, there's didgeridoo, there's steel drums, there's delayed effects on other instruments so they don't even sound like themselves, so he was not just relying on like his education. He was experimenting and innovating, and it shows in the quality of his music and the diversity of it.
Yeah, I definitely got a sense that he might have sold some tools and bought in new tools, or like you say, lean closer to some music producers and then seeing what he could do that he hadn't done. And I think you have to, if you're going to do a great job every time, you have to go somewhere where you're comfortable going versus, like you say, stay in your lane and then just slowly do a little nuance and add-ons. So, but again, of all these movies we talked about, I can't think of any that sound exactly the same. And that says a lot for movies that he does that are extremely similar. His other military scores don't sound like his Rambo ones. His other creature features don't sound like the Alien score. So, I mean, that is something. That is such something, because so many other people would have just recycled or used rejected segments. And
Definitely.
I would not be surprised if there's even, I mean, he's done so many, and obviously some of these movies probably don't have a score for them. So I'm sure there might even be a bootleg out there somewhere where someone ripped the score from the movie and said, here you go. Anything for Goldsmith. But yeah, I think Joel was pretty good too at definitely following his father's predicament, and he mainly just stuck to doing, again, just TV and miniseries spectacles. But I mean, if you even listen to some scores that he works with his father on, that he does a good job of blending it in, as opposed to, I think that's Jerry versus Joel filling in. So I think he was definitely close to home at supervising what his dad was doing, as opposed to, whatever I can do for the day. It's what's in the can. I'm glad that various ceremonies and, he got a Hollywood Walk of Fame star. That is something, because there's just so many other people who've been around for years, editors and makeup and what have you, and they aren't even remotely acknowledged unless they get a award nom. So, I do want to applaud him for being featured at various theme park attractions. That would just be just so unsound if he wasn't used for some of their promos or music that plays at, the cafes there. So, yeah, no, gents, you have pretty much summed up this legend. I can't think of anyone else really who's had this ginormous, just almost 5 decades worth and come up pretty strong.
Yeah, for me, it's just real love. I love that music. I love the way it brings me back to my childhood. It brings me back to adventures in my imagination. It brings me back to, feelings of excitement or being afraid or being thrilled.
His music is world exploration music, basically.
Yeah.
Take you on a journey, and then boom goes the dynamite.
So I was thinking, when it was feeling like we'd sort of, covered how great he is, I was thinking, Yeah, hail to the king. And then I looked, his actual name is Gerald King Goldsmith.
Really?
I didn't even notice that.
So I thought that was pretty cool. He is the king.
He is the king. 1,000%. And I mean, you guys brought up so many great points on, again, just a talent who their unpredictability is their greatest asset.
We'll return after these messages.
JRS Podcast is proud to promote AutoCorrect, an independent film company with experienced industry professionals who can serve all your film industry needs. They include self-tapes, voice actor recordings, demo reel editing, script revisions, headshots, and much more. They're Actor Correct at your request. Book them on Instagram.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, Prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
Greetings, friends. My name is Dean Legero, and I'm the host of the 3324 podcast. I invite you to join me and my lifelong friend Eric Kuber to come with us as we discuss the music and movies that shaped our life. Each week, we'll pick an album or film that we really connect to, and not only give you some great info and trivia, but also discuss, debate, and celebrate what it means to us and the journey it took us on. We also look forward to hearing from you and giving us some of your picks for us to check out and discuss. I think it'll be a really fun experience, so come along with us for the ride. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider and at 3324.buzzsprout.com. Thanks for your time, and welcome to the 3324 family.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy. At eilfm.podbean.com.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up